Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, and today we are diving really deep into how to really build success and to really experience success in a way that feels actually true and aligned and easy. And I am here as an example of this can be real. And my guest is here as another example of how this really can be true and real for you as well. Joey Vaillancourt is my guest today. I'm super excited to have him here on the podcast. He's a guide for high achievers who are waking up. Through his work in personal development, influencer marketing, and conscious business strategy, he helps successful people shift from external chasing to internal fulfillment so they can begin living the life they've been postponing right now. And Joey, thank you so much for being here. I am just like I am eager to dive into this conversation. So please introduce yourself even further. I would love to hear just what got you here to the place that you're at right now?
Yeah, first off, thank you for having me on the show. I knew from the first time that we chatted, I was like, this person's different. And you can kind of get that vibe from people in terms of like where they're at emotionally on their EQ scale. So I was like, okay. So then we started to chat and lo and behold, we had a lot in common. Yeah, I mean, I've had, the typical journey of entrepreneurs who've operated businesses, have seen success, but have found themselves lost in the journey and reaching their milestones, but yet not achieving fulfillment. And that's been a lot of my journey was built upon this ego. I didn't even know that I was driven by ego, but I was trying to be successful in all these areas of my life. And what would happen was I'd reach success. And then I'd be like, okay, but now I got to chase the next thing. And then I'd chase the next thing. I'd be like, okay, then I'm going to be really happy. And then I can do the things I want to do. And of course, I'd get there and I'd be like, wait a minute, I'm not happy anymore. Like, what's happening here? I was stuck in a loop. You know what I mean? Like I was reaching success. Everything on paper seemed fine. I should have actually been super happy, super at peace, taking the time I wanted to, but I wasn't. And becoming a father and becoming, a better spouse, partner for my wife, and as a role model for my family, I realized that that needed to change. And some of the things that I did want to model differently that we can talk about later is like even just changing the way that I was numbing out, whether it was my drinking or just my addiction to work. And I realized that that's what I needed to address. I needed to change that, or else no matter what success I reached, it was never going to bring me fulfillment. I was never going to be the person actually living a present life with my family and being the person I wanted to be.
Mm. It's, I feel like it's a shift that well, personally, I don't think I know any entrepreneurs, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs. I don't think I know any that have gotten it right from the start, right? And quote unquote, right. As far as I think we all go through that time of, trying to do it the way the world says we're supposed to, trying to grind it out, trying to reach those markers of the seven-figure business or the eight-figure business, having the team, right? All of that. It's like we're conditioned by all of society to think of what success looks like, whether it looks like the fancy home or the fancy car or again, the seven, eight-figure business, that you're the CEO, right? That you get to be in charge of everything. But what I'm hearing from you, like that was coming from ego. And I think that's for everyone. It's, all of us are working from ego when it's this, this sense of it's me doing it. I'm the one doing it. And I have to be on top. I have to manage and force things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing that I took away is like everybody has this idea. It's like you hear everybody, I want to build $100 million company. I want to build a $1 billion company. It's not to say that money isn't a good or bad thing. But it's like, why are you building this? And then people will say, well, I have a mission to change 100,000 lives or something. And again, it's like, why are you building it? Like, what's the deeper level here? Because what are you doing daily? Like, what does this mean to you? And how are you living your life? And one of the sayings that I've given to myself as my own quote is like, the life that you're living is the life that you're building. thinking that one day it's going to change because, oh, once I hit that marker, then I'm going to be able to spend time with my family, do all the things I've been putting off, or even think of traditional retirement. How many people end up in retirement? They don't have either the money that they want or they're met with like horrible disease, sickness, injury, and they're postponing something for the future that they could be living now and starting to build a life around a business and make it more lifestyle. I'm really against the hustle culture. I don't believe that you have to hustle and grind. I think you can be working hard and be disciplined, but you can enjoy the process. And designing a business around your lifestyle versus your business in your lifestyle. You know what I mean? Like it's integrating it properly and getting things in order so that you're not left feeling unfulfilled every time. And I kept going through this, and honestly, I couldn't help myself. Like I talked about like ego and stuff. I didn't realize I had an ego. Okay.
Mhm.
Back in like 2015, I'll share a story is I've always been like an entrepreneur. So I'm not the traditional entrepreneur who's always launched my own companies. I've been a great consultant. I'm really good at like integration, but also a visionary. I'm kind of like a hybrid. So I've been working with one company, and I'm an investor with them. It's Bioptimizers. And so in 2015, I came into the company and I had like a big head, thought that I knew everything. And after a couple of years of working with them, my CEO sat me down and he was like, "Hey, listen, Joey," he's like, "You're a great guy, but he's like, you can really be better. And you're really just a B grader right now." And he's like, "You need to become an A player." And at the time, I was just like, how dare this guy? Like, who's this guy to tell me that I'm a B grader? Does he know who I am? And like, again, ego popping up, right? But it was the best thing that I needed to hear at the time because I wasn't operating at my full capacity. I wasn't open to seeing my own opportunities for growth. I wasn't even listening to podcasts back then. I wasn't reading books. I wasn't learning. I didn't do anything. And I thought the world revolved around me. Right. So then I started to travel, started to read books. I started to get into like David Hawkins and the power of letting go and all these, self-development books and things like that. But the writing was on the wall. I just wasn't looking. And when I realized, I turned the mirror back to myself. I was like, oh my God, like I have such an opportunity to grow into become a better person. And this requires vulnerability, requires openness, honesty. So it was like at the time, I didn't want to hear that, but it was the best thing I needed to hear. And now I look at everything in life, whether it's something that happened to me that I wanted it to or not, I look at it as an opportunity. And from there, I just went on a growth trajectory, going down rabbit holes of like, how can I improve? And now I'm enjoying the process more. I was more like scrutinizing. I'm a reformed control addict. Like I used to want to control circumstances. And then around 2022, I set an intention for myself. And from like the age of 17, I've been whiteboarding and like doing checklists, and people thought I was crazy back in high school. My parents were like, "Why is he like what's he doing?" Because they never taught me that, right? But I was unique in the sense that I knew how to manifest, but I didn't understand what manifestation was. So I was
Mm.
attracting a lot of my things. I launched a CD whenever I was like 17. I competed in fitness modeling. I bought a farm without ever knowing how to even drive a tractor at the time. So I'd just been constantly visioning, but it was coming from ego. It was coming from something to prove to people, right? So fast forward to 2022, I set an intention again to say, I want to go speak on a stage. And this year I want to find a financial mentor, a business coach, and maybe like a life coach. I'm like, I need three coaches. So about a year later, I got a stage talk. And so I was going to go talk about influencer marketing at Forum's Mastermind with Amber Spears. That's a great event, by the way. And lo and behold, there's another speaker there that day. And I went after him. Okay. So this was my mentor, and his name is David Bayer. Amazing, phenomenal speaker. And this is like my second time on stage speaking on like a subject matter expert, not like, singing or like guitar playing and stuff. So I saw him speak and I'm like, oh my God, this guy is like, he's just speaking right to me. And you have that moment of like, this
Hmm.
person understands, this is my guy. So then he was interested in influencer marketing. So we ended up having a conversation at the event in the room. And then later he's like, let's do another call. And so when we got back, we got together on a call and I talked to him about influencer marketing. And then he had like a powerful conversation, which really was like a sales pitch. After I kind of thought about it, I'm like, I realized he was enrolling me. But again, best thing. And previously I would have been like turned off by that. I've always had this like negative association with like salespeople. I feel like they're trying to like scam me and stuff, which is
Hmm.
something I've worked through and having to forgive. But my limiting belief, going back to the core concept of like I couldn't help myself, was that he's like, "Well, what do you believe about success?" And I'm like, "Well, you have to outwork everybody in the room. You have to sacrifice, you have to suffer, And that's the way to achieve success. That's the only way I know up until now, right? And he's like, well, what if the best way to produce a result was from a relaxed state by spending time or less time on it? That took an hour for us to get to that empowering belief. But that's where we left that conversation. And I was like, well, that's impossible. And he's like, well, can you think of a time when life was easy? Like when you launched maybe a marketing campaign and it was just like amazing and you didn't have to really work that hard. And I was like, so I thought, I'm like, yeah, actually, you know what? We launched this magnesium campaign and it was phenomenal and we didn't have to work that hard. And he's like, can you find more evidence? And I kept doing that. And what he was training me to do was like, activate the reticular activating system, which is what we focus on. It's like when you buy a red car, you start noticing red cars everywhere. But I never really had the connection, like the neuroscience behind all this. I was just operating from like desire, vision, drive,
Right.
right? But it wasn't fun. I thought it was fun, but like after 15 years of doing this, you're tired, right? And then you're living out of alignment, and all of a sudden you're chasing things you don't know why. So I went and started to coach with David for a year, and it was the best year of my life. I like traveled more than ever. I took like 6 trips with my family. I let go of control. I started surrendering to like, hey, at 4 o'clock, I'm clocking out. I'm not coming
Mm.
back on all the time, trying to get more done because my new belief is that I'm going to operate from a state of relaxation, going to spend less time on this, and things are going to unfold the way they should. And at first, you're like resisting the heck out of it, right? You're like, this isn't going to work. Like, I know that I have to hustle. But after a certain time, and it takes about 30 to 60, maybe 90 days for like the echo effect to leave, meaning like you have
Mhm.
this old belief system that's driving your life. That's not just going to disappear in a day. So you have to leave room for that to bake in. All of a sudden, I noticed my teams being more empowered. They were taking on more responsibility. I was operating from my zone of genius and I was doing it just relaxing through it. And the trips, sometimes that'd be like a little bit primal on the trips, like that I thought I shouldn't be taking. And I would notice that it become an awareness like, oh, there's the old Joey kicking in. There's the
Yeah.
guy that thinks he has to hustle and pause and like stick back and work longer. But then I'd be giving up tripping with my family. I was like, so I'd lean into that new belief. And let me tell you, it was phenomenal for a transformation. And I've been building upon that for the past like 2.5 years. So even though I was on the personal development journey, this was the shift where I was like, this is how I want to feel. This is how I want to live. And all of a sudden, I had more success than ever before, too. I made more money. My teams were operating better. I had opportunities coming at me left, right, and center. And this is all coming from like working less and doing it from a relaxed state versus stressed out, trying to get more done. I was just like, okay, this works.
I'm just over here like nodding in agreement because I've had so many resonant experiences with that.
Mm,
Like the as before you said reticular activating system, like that was exactly what I was thinking as well. And for on the spiritual side plus the logical side, right? Like there's that manifestation word that I love, and I think we all have our specific and unique way that we do manifest, create things, put things into the 3D, however you want to say it. Um, and then my husband is also very logical and skeptical about everything, right? And so it's like I kind of like have this balance of how do we how do we explain this from an energetic perspective, and then how do we explain this from a psychological perspective as well, and that reticulating activating, oh, say it again.
reticular activating system. You
Reticular
got it.
activating system. That is such a powerful tool, and it's one of the things that I also use in my work with clients, to notice, right, when we're talking about abundance versus scarcity. I get so many people that come to me like, I'm just ready to be out of this scarcity mindset. Like, how do I get into an abundance mindset? Part of it is looking at what you already have, like noticing, finding, to what your mentor said, finding the evidence of what is already true.
Hmm.
And then you're literally allowing your brain to believe it, to see it, to believe it, to sink into it, and then to find more evidence. And once you open your eyes to that, you can't miss it. And I had a friend who taught meditation, who said this. It was such a easy little thing to see. It was like, oh, yeah. when we talk about what you focus on expands, which is another piece of that, the RAS, right? What you focus on expands. What you focus on, you see more of. We are these beautiful like radio transmitters, right? We receive so much information. We receive physical information, we receive energetic information. We are just like constantly being bombarded with information, and our systems can't handle all of it.
Hmm.
So what you focus on, everything is already there. All of the opportunities are already there. But if you're, of all the information you're being bombarded with, if you're focusing on the negative or you're focusing on the hard, that's what you're going to see more of because it's there. But so is the easy, the restful, the relaxed is also there already in the field, and you just have to give yourself the opportunity to see it. How does that land for you?
Oh, I mean, it lands. And what stands out to me is similar to maybe other people who have heard, like, maybe read Think and Grow Rich, have read The Secret. They can kind of get turned off by this because there's one part of it which is like, you still need to action this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't just read it and understand it and not apply it. So when people start hearing about, manifestation, visioning, positive thinking, it's almost like cliche to the point that people just don't buy into it. They're like, oh, that's like that woo-woo stuff. I was one of those people, right? But it's a practical application. It's like going to the gym. You don't just go to the gym once and say like, oh, now I'm in shape. It takes
Right.
practice. And my mentor called it neuro-sculpting. It's literally like our brains, there's plasticity in the brain that can be changed through reinforcement of doing this practice daily. And what he had me do for like the entire year, and I still do it, not as much daily. I find that I'm kind of in like a living meditation now where I can activate and understand. And he gave me just, I'll share with like anyone who's listening about this. There's two states of being. You're either in a primal state or a powerful state. So when you're in a primal state, you're thinking there's not enough money, there's not enough time, there's not enough opportunity. Powerful states thinking that there's always enough time, there's plenty of money out there, and everything's an opportunity. When you're feeling primal, okay, whatever thought that is, he had 10,000 coaching calls over the course of like all his coaching with his other, sub coaches and everybody. And they realized that whenever you're feeling primal, it's actually not true. Okay.
Mm.
Whatever you're feeling, thinking money's like scarce, this relationship is hard, but the story is separate from the experience. So I'll give an example. Somebody loses their job, right? Now, losing a job is maybe a bad thing, but it could be a great thing. So the experience is you lose your job, but the story somebody gives could be two different things. It could be, I lost my job. This will never work out. I'll never get a better one. Everything always happens to me. The other person loses their job says, wow, okay, kind of sucks, but I know I've lost a job before and I didn't really like my job. And I know that this is working out for my greater good and life is working for me. I'm going to find something else. Like you said, what you're focused on and your energy goes towards is what you're going to start to attract. So you have a choice. The beautiful part of the evolution of who we are as species is well, the good and bad is that we have a narrative we can create around a situation. Nowhere else in nature are like squirrels giving us a narrative to like not finding the nut, as an example, right? So we're the only ones that bring upon the suffering or this powerful state. We can choose this. So constantly daily, what I'm doing now is when I notice a thought that doesn't feel good, I built an AI coach for myself. This is something that like I don't give to other people, but maybe I can include as like a secondary thing for anyone listening who wants to do this. But basically what you can do is like AI, go to ChatGPT or whatever one you want. And what I did is I loaded 18 transcripts of all my coaching calls with David. And I
Mm.
said, you are now my new David coach. I said, anytime I come to you and I just brain dump in the morning sometimes, like, hey, I'm feeling a bit low, feeling like I'm not doing enough, coach me as David would, or as Oprah would, or Tony Robbins. And it'll just coach you back. And sometimes, even in the moment, I don't even have to do that. I just go, hey, I know I'm not feeling good with that thought. I know it's not true. What else could be true?
Mm.
Oh, this didn't work out. It's never working out. No, it didn't work out. It wasn't really meant to. And actually, it's something I didn't want to do. So if you can start to train your brain to look at this way, you relax through the process. And the whole goal of this, again, if a financial output is your marker, that's fine. But why do it from this stressed state? You don't have to. It can be a fun experience. And one of the concepts that I'm bringing to the world that I want to continue to like bring to more people is something that I'll talk about later is the Great Life Experiment. What if life was just this great experiment instead of this stressful, oh crap, I got to get it right, or there's a right and wrong. Maybe there's not a black and white all the time, right? Don't know if that makes sense, but I'll pause there to see if anything landed.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So this idea that there's not a black and white, there's not a right and wrong, right? That's another piece of I feel like that's so entrenched with ego as well, right? Because if there's a right and a wrong, then what does the ego want to do? The ego wants to be right. It doesn't want to be on the wrong side. It wants to be on the right side. And so when we see the world in this dualistic way, binary way, whichever way you want to call that, then there is like an either or. And that means there's a right or a wrong, or there's a, you know, better or worse choice. And when we give our give ourselves the grace and allow, I used the word surrender before, which is such a good point here too. When you surrender to the fact that it's not black and white, it's black is over here, white is over here, and there's an entire spectrum between those two colors, right? Everything is a shade of nuance, everything is opportunity. That starts to not only in my experience, it not only starts to help the opportunities show up, help you see the opportunities that are there in front of you. It also helps people soften into greater compassion for themselves and for other people as well. And so that's a big piece for me is that when we live in the experiment and we really allow ourselves to live in the experiment as an experiment, it starts to give grace. It starts to give opportunity for other people, right? So I see you, and I know you're experimenting too. You're living this life in this body for the first time too. So how interesting. How interesting of what you're experiencing versus what I'm experiencing.
And it's really perception shifts and perspectives. So I look back on my life, and for a long time, I looked at everything as failures. Like
Mm,
I had big aspirations when I was younger that like, hey, I was going to be a music phenomenon. I was going to write great music, and I wanted to be like a live performer, release a CD, and like I really couldn't sing that well, but I did it anyways. And I didn't ask for permission from other people. I just figured it out. I went and I did it. And I think that passion is important. You know, whatever you're doing now, I still play music, even if I'm not going to become a phenomenon in music. That's okay. It's part of my DNA. It's part of my meditative practice. I also meditate, but I also love just playing music because it relaxes me. But like music was a failure for a long time. I was like, damn, I didn't do well. I quit hockey because at the time I didn't realize that body composition was a thing. I didn't realize I could actually get bigger on purpose because I was told that, hey, you're a skinny guy, you're never going to be bigger. And then ended up doing fitness modeling. Again, ego drove me to probably some sort of like sub distinction of this was like, hey, I'll show you guys. But I also learned a lot through discipline and stuff like that. But the point is, everything that I thought was a failure at the time, now I look back on it and says, no, like everything actually built me into who I am today. I needed to experience all that contrast. And it wasn't a failure. I learned a lot. I had fun. And now I'm perfectly positioned to serve somebody that I was meant to serve. I'm growing into the person I'm becoming that I was always meant to be. And that was a big shift because for a long time, I just looked at my life as a long laundry list of failures.
mm,
And when I kept looking at it that way, what was happening when I had kids, I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So like we were older parents, actually got divorced like in 2017, 18. And within about 6 months, I had met my new soulmate on
mm,
our first date. I remember it was like the worst first date for her probably because I was like, hey, listen, I want kids, and here's the life that I envision. If that's not for you, then this isn't going to work. I'm just being honest. And you know, who would give that ultimatum on the first date? But it was meant to be because she was like, "Yeah, I want that too." So I went back to my old school. I got out like the whiteboard, did a vision board. Within 6 months, we moved into our dream house on the river in the mountains. We had started to set intentions of what our life looks like. We started to, strive for kids. And within like a year, we were pregnant and living the best life. And I was like,
mm,
oh my God, like, look at that. And I was like, of course, I'm a powerful creator. I can do all this. I was driven by ego still, though. And what happened was after a couple of years, I was still numbing out. My vice has always been alcohol. Like some people it's drugs, some people it's like, other substances, whatever the case is, or Netflix or whatever. And I'm like, as I thought about I call it handed down beliefs from parents. Parents have well intentions. I'm not blaming my parents. I think they were supportive, loving, kind parents and did the best that they could. But at the same time, they left me with a few beliefs, whether they knew it or not. I
Mhm.
associated alcohol to having fun, to escaping, and that you did this on social occasions. This is how you opened up. This is how you're vulnerable with people. Because I was
Right.
like a shy kid. So for me to open up took a lot. And so alcohol really helped when I became of age. And actually even before, because I was like drinking when I was like since I was 14, 15. Sorry, mom and dad, just in case you didn't
Oops.
know. And I was like, why am I doing this? First off, I don't want my kids to know that. Like, I don't want them to associate alcohol to fun.
Hmm.
So I need to change. But like, why am I even going to this if life is perfect, if everything I wanted I have now? And when I started to coach with David, it was the biggest investment of my life. And I invested probably over 300K into like personal development, masterminds up until that point. This one here was like one of the biggest ones that added to this. And I remember sitting down with David the next morning. I signed the check, which was like, by the way, you ever make an investment at that level in yourself? That act itself is transformational. If you never
Yes.
hired a coach, just that moment, I could have walked away and been like transformed already. Everything else I experienced, amazing. But I was just like, from that moment, I was a different person. And
Yeah.
that night, I sat down with my wife and I was like, listen, like, I just invested a lot of money. And I said, I think this is the time I'm going to quit alcohol. And she's like, okay. And, like, I support you. And so the next morning, I sat down with David and like I was freaking out a little bit because I like invested a lot of money and I was like, okay, David, give me the plan. Like, what am I doing? Like, what am I eating? What time am I going to the bathroom? Like, just give me exactly what, because I was a control freak, right?
Yep. Yep.
And he's like, you need to relax first off. That's what you need to do this year. And I was like, okay, that's not what I want to hear, but I know that's what I need to hear. And then I told him, I'm like, I also want to quit alcohol. And I was still operating from shame. Like I wasn't ready to admit that I had a problem. So even telling him that, and he was like, "Why do you want to?" And I'm like, "Oh, sometimes I think I drink to escape." And the reality was, like, I was drinking almost like every other night sometimes, and it was out of hand, and I wasn't willing to admit it. But because
Hmm.
I made that commitment in myself, and I knew that like I wanted to make this work and put everything in my advantage, that I needed to cut that. And that was just one of many things that I cut from my life. But because I committed at that level, it was a forced accountability. And so I left there and then I was like 2 months sober. And I was like, hey, I was thinking to myself, like, I don't know if I can actually do this. So I kind of thought about this. I'm like, well, what do other successful people do when they want to get sober? I'm like, oh, they all join AA. I'm like, probably should join AA. So I had my CEO, who's been like a mentor for me with Bioptimizers, Matt Gallant. He's an amazing teacher, and he's also been sober for like 14 years. And I'm like, hey, Matt, like, I think I need help. Can you help me? I know you have a group, like a sponsor. And so he hooked me up and I just went all in. I burned the bridges because I knew if I didn't, I couldn't trust myself in that moment to stay committed to that decision. And I knew that if I did this, that it'd be putting me on display in a really good way. Like it's like showing up naked in front of people, like you're honest, you're vulnerable, you're admitting it. And that was the most, again, I had a lot of transformation, money, better mindset, but then getting clear, clean, and sober. I mean, for my kids, for myself, for my health, everything, it changed. And I would say that beyond just mindset, when you're operating from that state of numbness, you're not thinking clearly. Your brain's constantly looking for that escape. And then
Hmm.
you do it, and then you feel like crap the next day. And then it's like you're starting over. You have all these weird thoughts that whenever you're not in that state, you don't have them anymore. It's like this best friend, you think it's your best friend who's telling you these stories that aren't true. So when I cut that out of my life, it was just like, wow. But I would have never done that had I not decided. And one of the key things that I've learned is that until you make a decision, you're stuck in procrastination. And you don't have to know how you're going to do something in order to decide you're going to do something. I know it sounds backwards for a lot of planners out there, including myself at the time, but it was like I was taught now that decide on what you want in your life and the how's going to figure itself out. As long as you're activated and you're focused on this destination, and maybe it's like you want more peace in your life. And usually you can find that out because a lot of people, they don't even take the time to think about it. And I usually say, well, you know what you don't want. That's the contrast. Okay. So
Hmm.
now what's the opposite of being stressed out? Okay, I want to be relaxed. What's the opposite of not spending time with your family? Spending more time with your family. I started to operate from that and let go of the expectation that I needed to figure it out. And from there, everything unfolded. And I'll give one quick example to just reinforce that point. I was really, again, when I was going through the 1 year transformation, I was trying to get two new consulting clients, and there was a trip coming up. And so I was like, oh, I can't go on the trip. I got to build my course. I got to do this. I got to do that. And David is like, well, maybe just go on the trip. Like, go have fun. That's what you want to be doing. You want to hang out with people. Like, go do that. There's plenty of time to do the rest of the stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'll listen to you. I'll go. And I went and I found my clients there. That wasn't the intention, but the how was already defined. And like the universe works in this weird way where it's like it just delivers what you want without you having to figure out all the little parts of it, which was super strange to me. So my point is I was operating from like control and ego, and I was getting what I wanted, but it was friggin' hard. And
Right.
now I get what I want from a more abundance mind, stress free. Well, not always stress free. We're all not perfect. And it is a journey. I would say the goal is to decrease the amount of time you're spending in that like stressed or primal state. And I used to spend maybe 12 hours a day. Now I'm down to like one or two. Some days it's better, some days it's worse. But it's not about never suffering or never experiencing stress, but it's about recognizing when you are and moving back into your original vision. What is it that you want in your life? How would you be acting if the wish was fulfilled? You had everything. Start to be that person now. It doesn't mean going out and spending and like maxing out your credit cards, but it means like, would you, if your kid ran into the room, would you be like, no, daddy has to work, like you have to go away? Or would that be like, I believe in a higher power. I believe my higher power is actually telling me it's time to play with my kids when that happens versus looking
Mm.
at it as an interruption now. That's been a big mindset shift.
Ooh, that's such an important one. Um, and I can really, really relate to the numbing aspect. And that was before I started X squared. So back in especially like 2018 to 2020 through 2020. I started X squared in 2021. And before that, like the culture of finance, the culture of, the office I worked at was you grind and everyone drinks. And we were in Cincinnati, Ohio. So bourbon, Kentucky bourbon is right there, right? And I actually liked bourbon. And, there were different, so I was like the quote unquote cool girl that knew about bourbon. And that was like a party trick, right? And what I noticed for myself is that as that became more stressful, as things started to really fall out of alignment, in that place, I was drinking more and more too. It would be, you know, from a few times a week to ramping up to like every night. And okay, just a little bit, just to take the edge off, right? Just to relax, kind of that same thing for you, like, oh, I am funnier, I am happier when I'm drunk. I get to loosen up. I get to kind of forget about these other stressors. And when I launched X Squared in 2021, when I started really diving into my emotional and spiritual transformation, I realized that the numbing, anything that we do to numb, takes away from our ability to feel our emotions. And that is where that's where all the learning is. Truly. Like for me, that was when I learned to connect back to my emotions, connect back to my body, connect deeply, feel my emotions. That launched me into being able to hold space for myself and hold space for others. Because what I learned and integrated from that was like we can only meet someone else as deeply as we've met our own selves. And anything we do to numb keeps us really surface level. It's like here's the depth of you. And when you're numbing out, you're like, okay, I'm willing to go here. And that's it. I'm not willing to go down to the depths of who I am and what I feel. And so we really restrict our experience of not only of pain, but of joy and of peace. because we're only allowing ourselves a very narrow band of emotional experience. Um, so that was the thing for me. And also, I did a plant medicine journey in 2024. That part of it was preparing for that was like, okay, you can't drink for, a good couple weeks, like nothing at all, not a caffeine, anything. Just you can drink water, obviously. But from that point, like after that journey, I was like, I actually don't want alcohol at all.
Mm.
And it was almost, it had been tapering down a ton before that, but at that point, it was like, I have no need for that. I don't need it. And so it's been such an interesting shift. And for me, it's like I'll have a glass of wine every once in a while if it goes with a meal, that kind of thing. I'm not like 0% alcohol, but it's a couple times per month. And it's for just because I want to have that with a meal, like it's a good compliment or that kind of thing. It's not because I have an emotional pain that I'm trying to numb. And that's such a different experience.
Yeah, and I've thought about that too. It's interesting because my wife also like enjoys a glass of wine with a meal. And there's times where I'm like, I just wish I could go back to like, I'd like to taste the beer. I like that one beer. But for me, it was like I couldn't trust it. And I'm like, for me, I'm also just why go back? I've already
Hmm.
made it this far. But you mentioned something really key, and it's whenever whether it's getting sober, whether it's making lifestyle changes, just doing the change itself isn't always enough. And that's why a
Hmm.
lot of people struggle with like working out, or getting sober or making a big lifestyle shift, like thinking that the best way to produce a result is spending less time from a relaxed state. It's like, oh, that's crazy. I'll try for a little bit. It's the internal work. What's the reason behind why you're going back to this thing? So you can quit drinking, but if you don't address, and there's a lot, and like, people, again, the 12 steps for a long time, even for me, I looked at it as like, oh God, I'd be embarrassed to be in that. Just being honest, like that's how I felt. I was like, I didn't really categorize people in a 12 step as successful. I looked at it as like a bad thing, but I've shifted, of course. And what it forces you to do, or invites you to do, I should say, is do the work. Like there's a big forgiveness practice that I was already doing prior to doing 12 steps, but understanding emotionally, what are the blockers? What are the things for you? Why is it that you're going back to this? If you don't work at that, that's why they call it like, white knuckling sober, like sobriety. It's the people that have never done the work, but they're just staying sober. It's a lot harder. And the
Hmm.
same thing when you're trying to like shift the way you operate in your business to actually leave room for family, leave room for time to reflect and time for yourself, like even to meditate or to work out, the things you think that aren't going to bring you success. The reason why you're having that resistance is because you're not going inward. You're
Hmm.
focused on the external. Like, no, if I do that, I can't do that. And so for me, I had to do a lot of forgiveness work. I had to surrender to a lot of things. And now it's easier. Now I don't feel the pull to it because not only did I quit it, but I also did the background work to it. And that's so key. And that's the struggle that feel most people face is just that they don't have the tools to equip them with like, how do I reach that level? And I was fortunate. I had a lot of great mentors that taught me the power of letting go, the power of forgiveness, the power of understanding, decision making, and like, again, the reticular activating system and just getting out of your own way. Stop operating on autopilot. Be intentional with the way you live. Start to align a life that you actually want to live for a very long time and
Hmm.
still go after the goals you have, but do it from a way that's like, again, the great life experiment. This is an experiment. You can change, you can pivot, you can give yourself permission to do things. If not, what's the point of it all? And it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you're a founder, an entrepreneur, somebody working in a corporation. This is attainable by everybody, right? And I'm a prime testament to that. Like I'm not $100 million founder. I've been very successful in my career. I've been able to provide a lifestyle that I've always wanted, and I'm comfortable, and I don't have $100 million aspiration. But I guarantee you that the successful people are also using this, and people like me and people that are like 9 to 5, you can achieve happiness and peace throughout this journey and not wait for it to happen at some other time, whether it's retirement or the next KPI you hit or the next financial success you unlock.
Oh, and it's so, I mean, from my seat, working with people, like retirement is not really a thing that the people that I work with are mostly not looking forward to the way that it used to be. Right. So
Right.
like, why do I want to build a life that I want to run away from? And that is the key. And you mentioned that earlier too, right? It's like the journey is the point. And so if we put that at the center, like how do we create the life that we want to live? Yes, you can have goals for the future. I will hold those goals with you. I will hold that vision with you. And we want the journey itself to be a part of that. Experiencing your children growing up, experiencing, joy with your partner or your spouse, experiencing fulfillment in your work and impact, right? Like that's the journey, that's the today, the now that will, if you get to the destination and you hated the whole journey, you're going to hate the destination. If you build in fear, this is the money aspect that I've really, really come to understand too over my time in this industry. If you build assets and build wealth in fear of always losing it, when you go to retire, you will be terrified of always losing it. That doesn't go away on its own. You have to see it and you have to address it and transform it. It doesn't getting to the success without feeling like allowing yourself to feel that and again emotionally have emotional depth with what you're creating. It's just always going to feel hollow when you get to that success, quote unquote, success side.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll share one quick thing with you because it's a tactical thing people need to do more. If you're already vision boarding and like doing this work, one thing I wasn't doing was connecting it to emotionally.
Hmm.
So connecting it to emotionally is really the power. So if you think about maybe you want a new house, maybe you want a new financial level of success. Again, desires aren't a bad thing. However, you need to feel that now. Okay. It doesn't mean, again, going and spending as if you have $1 million, but it's feeling like, what would the feeling feel like if I had a million, 100 million, whatever your target is, in the bank? Oh man, that would feel good. Like, what would it feel like to find your perfect partner? And if you operate from there, you're relaxed. And if you trust the process that it's going to come, you can stay relaxed. To your point, you can enjoy everything that's coming your way, knowing that it's coming. And it's easier for people that have like seen this happen to adopt this. But I would just say lean into faith and trust on this, that a lot of people do this. And for me, I wasn't connecting emotionally to it. And that's where I was like, because I wasn't doing somatic work, which is a whole
Hmm.
other conversation, but I wasn't able to get into my body and feel this. And now I can tap in and I can feel the state of what it's like. And sometimes the best way to do it is like think about what brings you joy. For me, it's like when I come home from the gym like 6 o'clock in the morning or seven, my kids rush out and they all come and hug me. Like that's a reality I have, and it's one of my favorite times a day. So whenever I'm thinking like, what do I want to feel whenever I reach that next level of success? Maybe I can't tap into it because my mind can't even fathom it, but I can connect emotionally to that feeling with my kids, and I'm like, oh, if it feels anything like this, that's beautiful, and I can feel that in the moment right now. And everyone has access to some sort of memory that they can build and source upon. And the last thing that I'll mention on this is I talked to a guy who was like 10x more financially successful than me. And we were at this event and he was talking to me and he heard that I was working with a couple mentors and he saw the transformation, I guess, in me. And he's like, hey, I want to talk to you like about your experience with working with these people. And like, it seems like it's really going well. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, best decision of my life. Like, it was awesome. And I'm like, why do you want to work with them though? And he's like, well, I want to find peace. And I
Hmm.
was sitting here going like, I thought this guy had it all figured out. He had a thriving business. He had money in the bank. He's retired, and to me, I don't want to retire either. I just want to work with amazing people longer and just do better business, whatever. But here's a guy that I thought it all figured out, and he still couldn't find peace, no matter what success he had. And I was like, not in an ego way, but I was like 38 years old. This guy was like 55. And I'm like, I feel like I have it all right now. Even if
Hmm.
I have desires for other things, the fact that I'm able to tap into this gratitude, peaceful feeling, more relaxed through it, and live the life that I want to live and build into, I was just blown away. And I felt for this person. And that's why I wanted to create tools for other people to start to reflect the way I did and kind of condense like 20 years down into like a 30-day journey. So,
Yeah.
anyways, that was like just profoundly powerful in insight that no matter what success people have, if they're really, then most people come to the end of the road and it's like, oh crap, I'm not happy and I'm not peaceful. And that's
Mhm.
one of my worst fears is getting to that place. I never want to be there. And I don't think I ever will be because of the tools that I've been able to introduce to myself now and others.
And so, with that, tell us about the Great Life Experiment that you're launching. How can people find it? Yeah, just tell us more about what that is. And if someone's like, okay, I'm ready to like try something, I'm ready to experiment somehow, what can they do?
Yeah. So the Great Life Experiment is it's a book in progress, but for now it is a 30-day challenge to break free, reconnect, and design a life that you love that's in alignment. Okay, so it's not a life that you want to escape. Most people are building a life that they're like, oh, I'm gonna love this. And then it's like, oh crap, I secretly now want to not live this life. But that doesn't make sense. Like I wanted this. So if people are like stuck on autopilot, if you're just skating by or like you feel like you're just getting by and it's like, oh, it's good enough. Everybody feels like this. It's a 30-day challenge. And one day at a time, it's one micro reflection based on one concept of life with a powerful question to ask yourself and then sit down and reflect on it. A little bit of journaling, but it's like 5 minutes a day. 30 days of this, these micro shifts in the way you think about the world, your perception, your perspective on things, it's going to have a massive impact in how you go about living your life and making these changes we talked about today. So it's the Great Life Experiment.ca because I'm in Canada, so I always have the .cas and go through it. It's going to be a daily email and reflection point. And again, I've condensed like the 20 years of learnings that I've taken. I said if I were to give this to like my kid, my nephew, or a friend, this is what's going to start that change in embodying a stress-free environment, more relaxation, and more success, and just enjoying the experience of life.
Mhm. So powerful and so important. So important to enjoy this experience of life. I literally was talking to my oldest daughter about this last night. That's why we're here. That's why we have these bodies. That's why we are having this experience is to connect with life and to connect with each other and to connect with the experience of being alive. And so I love that you've created a tool for reflection and for just bringing that in every day, that little practice of making small shifts. One of my mentors would always say, it's the small hinges swing big doors. And sometimes you just need that little tiny shift to swing that big door. And that was always a powerful visual for me as well. And so thank you, Joey, so much for being here. Thank you for sharing about your journey in all the different ways. And if anyone wants to find the Great Life Experiment, that's down in the show notes in the links for you. And Joey, where else can people find you if they have any other questions? You have a great podcast.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for having me on the show and everyone for listening. Hopefully, it connected, inspired one person. I also have the podcast, Real Influence, which you're going to be on shortly, and we talk about all these things. This is the focus of it, and it's really coming down to what is real influence in your life, like who's influencing it and coming from within. So we talk about that, realinfluence.now.com and joeyvaillancourt.com as well. You can learn about all our adventures we're doing. We have community meetups coming up next year in Canada. We want to bring people to our home, to our sanctuary, and
Fun.
start to develop like really the awakened being. We're toying around with a couple names, but if you're interested in this, go to the podcast, check it out, and the Great Life Experiment as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joey. I really appreciate the time.